This webinar is the fourth in a series of webinars aimed at achieving scholar success in the digital era. This webinar series brings together leading academics, early career researchers, and postgraduates from across the Universitas 21 network to explore emerging issues in the world of academia. FINE's aim is to act as a forum for international networks in education. And we hope these webinars can provide a space to learn, network, and develop awareness of the challenges of higher education and possible ways to negotiate these issues as well. Today's webinar discusses equity and inclusivity issues raised by the digitization of the higher education space. And we have a couple of leading academics that will share their advice and their wisdom to help navigate the evolving academic digital space. Before introducing the panel, just a brief introduction to your hosts today. We are the leadership team from FINE. You're on mute.
I'm on mute, but I'm Jack Webster. I'm from the University of Auckland. Yeah, nice to meet you all today.
It's always forget. Hi everyone, I'm Daisy. I'm a PhD at the University of Edinburgh, and my research particularly focuses on student engagement, student partnership, and student power in higher education.
And I'm Manal Al-Mazbouh. I'm also a PhD student at the University of Auckland, and we welcome all of you here.
So I will take this part. So welcome everyone to join us today. We really appreciate your engagement in our events. We will share more details about FINE Group, as you have heard from our introduction just now at the end of the webinar. And now, please join with me to welcome our guest speaker today. And they are very kind to share their experience and perspective with all of us. So we also would like to see any of you who may be interested in kind of knowledge sharing in the future. Please feel free to contact us for any future talks if you are interested. So today, our two guest speakers are both from the University of Maryland in US, and they are Dr. Jing Liu and Dr. Marcio Oliveira. Jing is an assistant professor in education policy. He got his PhD in economics of education from Stanford University in 2018 and was named as a National Academy of Education Sciences Fellow. His research particularly focuses on identifying cause and effect relationships about how day-to-day interactions in schools and classrooms affect student learning outcomes. And his recent work focuses on how to use new advancement in our AI to improve teaching and learning outcomes, and how to prepare students for an AI-infused future. So let's welcome Jing to this panel today.
Thank you so much.
Our next panelist is Dr. Marcio Oliveira. Marcio is an Assistant Vice President in the Teaching and Learning Transformation Center in Academic Technology and Innovation at the University of Maryland. In this role, he provides strategic leadership and vision for developing and executing integrated, comprehensive strategies that promote excellence and innovation in teaching, learning, and scholarly activities. His work includes implementing innovative, technology-enhanced pedagogical practices, creating collaborative learning environments, and promoting educational innovation and experiential learning. The leadership of these combined efforts aims to enhance student success and academic excellence. Again, we welcome Marcio and Jing to the panel today.
Thank you so much.
So our discussion today is going to be based around a few different topics related to equity and inclusion in digitized higher education space. I suppose just to begin, we can have a pretty broad question just to describe the current landscape of digital equity and inclusion. Feel free to relate this to either your own context or your own experiences, or the academic literature that you're engaging with, or some of the projects you've been involved in, just things that we can sort of make more tangible to our experiences in the higher education space. But maybe just to start the broad question then, so how would you describe the situation of digital equity and inclusivity in higher education, and how does this impact the wider higher education landscape as a whole? I don't know if Marcio, if you wanted to begin on this topic.
Sure. Thank you, Jack. I'll be happy to get us started. And I before I just answer the question, just want to welcome everyone here and make sure that everyone knows that feel free to speak up, to engage, to ask questions on the chat. And this means to be an open dialogue, so we can have the best interaction possible for you to get the most of it. So I want to just make sure that there's no right and wrong. Just feel free to speak up and ask questions. With respect to your question, Jack, I think one thing I want to say is that I believe every institution of higher education is doing their best to provide as many technologies as possible to its constituents, right? To students, graduate and undergraduate students. I think everyone is doing their best with the resource that they have to provide tools that people can succeed in their work. The biggest challenge that we have is that what kind of technology is provided at the enterprise level and what type of technology is needed in very specific disciplines that people work and research on. And that is it's a challenge for every single institution. And particularly for early career researchers and postgraduate researchers, it gets a little bit more complicated because they usually need more sophisticated tools, right? Those generic productivity tools are not necessarily applied. So the gap gets wider, and the divide gets worse when we're talking about more advanced use of technologies that they are more expensive sometimes to provide to everyone. And so access is a problem. I also believe that in many countries, network connectivity is still a big problem. Not just access to the tool, but how do I have technology that support not just interactions, but also collaborations across the different countries, for example, international collaborations across for researchers. So I can give an example that recently I have been invited to connect with a group in South Africa. And I said, maybe we should just get a kickstart and having a large Zoom meeting with everyone. And say, well, that's not going to work much for us because we cannot rely much in a network to have such to establish the connection that we want with you in a way that we need it. So we need to bring you physically here if that's the case. So we are working out details, but some countries do face connectivity issues, network connectivity issues, and this turn into a big divide from students or early career people in different countries. And finally, I want to say digital skills, right? How much the university can invest in helping our students to understand, to just not be literate. I would say, I used to call it digital fluency, and how can we help our students to keep up with all the new tools that are being built in the speed of light, and how can we help our students to understand, not just our undergrad students, but also early career professionals, to make sure that they know. And it's not just about knowing that the tool exists and the tool, it's available or not available, but use the tool at its full potential, right? Think about, we all know that MATLAB is something very powerful. Do we use MATLAB at the full potential of MATLAB? And in general, doctor students, they are learning these tools in the lab from each other, and they learn to the level that a colleague sometimes have learned, and they are not necessarily using the tool at its full potential. Analytical tools, physical analytical tools, and everything else. I will stop here and let Jin chime in.
Thank you, Marcio. My research actually mainly focuses on K-12 education. So in some ways, I don't feel like actually I'm an expert on those topics. At the same time, I'm an early career researcher who does a lot of computing heavy research. Some by training an economist, I do a lot of research using large scale data sets which recently I do a lot of AI research, which requires a lot of computing. So I feel actually I can contribute to the conversation from that angle. First of all, I want to talk about ChatGPT because that's kind of the buzzword right now. Many people can worry about just plagiarism caused by tools like ChatGPT or other generative AI chatbots, right? But at the same time, it's a really powerful personal tutor and can support your work and research a lot if you know how to use it very wisely, right? And we know that ChatGPT, there is like a free version, but there are also like paid versions that has a lot more sophisticated parameters and ways you can interact with. So that alone is actually creating inequality in some ways because in terms of across institutions, some institutions might be able to purchase the paid version of OpenAI for all their students, so they all have access to that same kind of powerful Gen AI tool. But certain universities, like at least at UMD, we currently don't have that kind of resources to do that, right? So that alone is kind of inequality across institutions. Even within the same institution, that people have different capacity to purchase those kind of different versions. That's kind of one level of inequality we can talk about here. The other is like just responding to what Marcio just mentioned in terms of whether people know how to use a tool, a computing software such as MATLAB or like Stata, which is one I often use. It's actually pretty expensive if you want to buy as a student. But Gen AI tools are far more sophisticated in terms of sometimes if you don't know how to use it, you have a prompt, it doesn't return what you want, then you kind of give it up. But like for people who know how to do prompt engineering, they know how to get the best out of a Gen AI tool. That will be really, really powerful. It will facilitate your research and career so much. So I think our teaching and learning center is actually doing a great job in terms of promoting this kind of skill sets, but we haven't actually we haven't been able to educate every early career scholar to do that in the same way, right? So I think in terms of how many people on this campus know how to do prompt engineering very, very well, how many people know all the full capacity of ChatGPT? We don't have really many. So I think that kind of digital inequality is something really new and everyone needs to grapple with across the world. So that's kind of something which is recently on my mind. Want to go back to a very basic level because I was an international student and my students are also international. Sometimes they just have trouble paying for a high-performing computer. Because my research is really computing heavy. So I asked my student to do this job. Then they were like, oh, it took my computer to run the full night to return this one table. We're like, okay, that's not sustainable. Let's figure out a way to do that. So now I purposefully kind of budget for my student to purchase a high functioning computer in my grants to really help them with that. But for people who kind of cannot really secure a lot of grants or something like that, it's actually gonna be a barrier for students to produce their work in an efficient way, especially in my field of computational social science. Now it's more and more computing heavy. So both in terms of the hardware and what kind of computing facility the university can provide to students to use are really, really important nowadays in terms of career success. Yeah, I will just pause there. Thank you. Any questions, we are very happy to address.
Cool, yeah, I mean, both raised some interesting points there, particularly around obviously access and equity in terms of distribution of resources and materials, and obviously the importance of that, because we see, obviously, as a doctoral student or early career researcher, it's about trying to maximize the potential that we have to engage with new knowledge and create new knowledge, and that often requires, obviously, the resources to do that, including funding. I think Manal makes a good point as well in the chat around just having connectivity often relies on the individual to fork out their own personal cost in order to just remain connected in some way. And I think also the points about ChatGPT and knowing how to prompt engineer, we're kind of at like maybe the second year of that now, where we're trying to progress that forward. But I know in the courses that I assist teaching on, we are trying to introduce that into the teaching so that the next sort of generation of undergraduates they have some of these skills, some of these more basic skills. But yeah, at the moment, we are kind of relying on word of mouth of other faculty members or other PhD students. So I guess following on from that point, particularly around trying to upskill and learn about some of these resources and supporting one another, do you have any ideas or any experiences of things you've seen that worked well, where early career researchers or postgrads can contribute to supporting one another or contribute to the ongoing dialogue around digital equity, or trying to use some of these tools to enhance their own experiences and their own learning in some way?
It's hard not to talk about AI, right? So at this moment, but I want to say that because AI has been such a hot topic, I would say it is critical that administrators and faculty members in higher education engage students and early career professionals in the conversation, right? For the matter of longevity, but also the fact that there's so many needs at this point with respect to these new emerging technologies. They are highly sophisticated, that they have been put in the market, with all respect here, as a we are experiencing technologies at very early stages of development. So many of those tools they're now available in the market, they are prototypes. They are not finalized product. They are being put in the market without necessarily a clear intention. And we are trying to use them and make it up as we try to use those tools. And one of the things that I've been talking very clearly, especially with respect to AI, is that how do we, as an academic community, want to leverage AI powerfully, intentionally, with purpose, right? You all remember when people created those digital whiteboards that you can write up and then they will print out, and they were very fancy. Universities start buying them. We thought that these will take over classrooms. No, those are designed by tech companies. Nobody came and talked to faculty like, what do you need from the fact? Like that conversation, it was skipped. Then they come and put a project everyone thought was very cool, but it's not useful, right? There was nothing like, there was not resolving any pedagogical problems. So how can we leverage those technologies to advance research, to advance the academic world, to advance education? And what is our intention at every institution to put those tools? Making it accessible to everyone is great, but let's make it accessible with a clear intention, with a clear purpose, right? There is benefit of experimentation, of incubation, and with those tools. Don't get me wrong, but I think when you're trying to scale the world, we need to be doing in a more intentional way. At this point, that's where I am right now, with respect to every technology that I deploy to my campus. What problem we're trying to resolve? How are we expanding faculty's capacity to teach better, to engage students better, or to enable researchers to conduct researches in which the transactional piece can be done by technology, and they can focus their brain into the big ideas, paradigm shifts, and thinking about big problems and recurring challenges of our world. The point that I also want to make is that we also educate our students that those prototypes are out there, and they are being just testers of prototypes, right? This happened with social media, and now it's happening with ChatGPT and other tools. We are being used as a population as testers of those tools, and without necessarily knowing, right? I just gave a talk, and I have 3 undergrad students came to me at the end and say, "Thank you for letting me know. I did not realize that this is what's going." Like now, I can use more intentionally those tools, right? Just the sense of awareness, the education that needs to happen around technology. What I said, the literacy, the basics of these technologies is something that's really important. And finally, I want to say, I am not doing it, but I'm committed to do it, is how can we develop leadership? Like, we have a new generation in our campus, early career professionals, we have students. How can we start thinking about, these will be the leaders, that's going to be leaders of tech company. These will be the leaders of the new education system, right? And in a world in which AI is fully enabled, how do we develop people with grounded values in humanity? How can you develop leaders that are their core values are grounded and their ethical values are grounded in a way that we can build a better world. We need to make that commitment. And I'm now zooming into a very high level here, but it is in the university that design created AI in labs a long time ago. That is the critical mass that developed this. And it's our commitment also to develop leadership around this area. And I don't think a lot of institutions are thinking about it besides just making tools available. So I not that I'm doing all this, Jack, but I am committed to spread the world and share the fact that we need to have a conversation. And I want to say, everyone is talking about responsible adoption of technology and responsible adoption of AI. We are not having the conversation that we need to have. What responsibility looks like. That conversation not necessarily taking place. And if you are early career, if you are a grad student, if you are a grad student, you want to be at the table of institution thinking about what responsibility look like in the future. How can we partner and work that together? How can we deploy tools that it serves to my purpose, to my intention, to my work that I'm doing in our campus?
Yeah, really interesting point of sort of like retaining that human connection in order to then have digital tools almost support or maybe overcome some of the issues, but definitely sort of progress learning and knowledge in some way. I think quite often with, like you've mentioned, with interactive whiteboards, but a whole range of different technologies, even Zoom to an extent, it's not progressing the pedagogical development. It's the same pedagogies that we used without the digital technologies, just with digital technologies, which, I mean, is kind of a useless development of digital technology then for that. But yeah, definitely I take your point as well about the leadership and the need to build leaders through role models and respect and engagement with some of the sort of challenges and barriers that exist with new technologies like AI. Which I think can lead into another question as well, then in relation to early career researchers and postgraduates, what do you see as being some of the common barriers and challenges that they face throughout their academic journey or in the first stages of their career, and what are maybe some of the ways that they could perhaps overcome them? And if you have any sort of examples of this, either of challenges or opportunities, feel free to bring those in as well. I don't know, Jing, do you want to start on this one to reply?
Sure. Digital barriers, challenges for early career researchers or postgraduate students. I think definitely having access to all of those computing capacity, as I mentioned, is expensive, right? So a lot of times it's really feasible for early career scholars to actually directly be able to pay for that, and they're all expensive. So I really want to mention two things. One is learn to leverage the resources you have on your campus. Actually, a lot of times I feel like my students are now fully aware of what resources their campus is already providing to them. So they didn't dig in deep enough before just asking me for providing that resources. Actually, a lot of times universities are doing a lot to invest in this kind of infrastructure and providing as much digital resources as they can afford. I think Marcio is doing a great job leading his office doing that already. So I just encourage all of you and all the students who are listening can do a lot more dig in the resources they already have around them. The second is really collaboration. That's kind of really key to not only overcome digital barriers or challenges, but also in general as a rule, as kind of how you be a successful researcher over along the way. It's about like this is what you can contribute to a research team or a research project, and you have trouble getting the computing or hardware or software to do this particular project. But you can collaborate with people who can afford that, who can contribute that kind of component. So together, you are going to be stronger. You can produce something like you cannot produce on your own. So I think learning to collaborate with people and complement in terms of both expertise and resources with other scholars is something like people don't realize until they are navigating a really challenging job market, right? Sometimes when students go on the market, they feel, oh, it's really hard, etc. But from my perspective, I remember when I was still a fifth-year student, I have a visiting scholar giving a talk at Stanford. And then we kind of had lunch together. We started to formulate a partnership in terms of doing one particular research project. Then that actually became my first research proposal to the Spencer Foundation and was later funded. And that's my first grant, which is a very tiny, like $50,000, but it actually allowed me to do a lot of things I couldn't imagine. So start to think about how you can collaborate with people, how to gather resources you need to overcome those challenges. I think it's something people need to think about. This is very from an individual perspective. So I think Marcia can speak more from the institution perspective.
Yeah, I would add two things to this. One is I've been talking a lot of challenges. I'm going to focus on opportunities at this moment. There is a huge opportunity for institutions in order to broaden access to technology, start establishing solid and corporate partnerships with tech companies. We end up having a lot of contracts with those tech companies, but we do not establish what I'm calling a business relationship with them. We do a contract, we buy products, we are just consumer of that particular product. I believe there is a great opportunity for institutions to create partnerships in which we are partnering, like you put the science behind and you put the arts and humanities behind, you put education behind, and you do this in a way that we can create a tech-enhanced world in a more responsible way. That's not just focused on making money and eventually selling the startup to a big company, right? That is a trend that's happening over the years. People, the young generation, when they do a startup and become a millionaire when they are 25 and then sell it out and just retire from there, right? So how do you make great products that really help us to solve big problems in our world? I think there's a strong partnership that could take place. And I usually call them corporate partnerships. University needs that because our funding is going down. At the same time, tech companies need that kind of brain, that kind of partnerships, because they are in the corporate world, but not necessarily in the academic. So I think straightening up the relationship between academia and companies and corporations is a great way. I also say that I want to talk about, I have seen, noticing, and here in our campus it's happening, the emergency of interdisciplinary programs, right? Like data analytics. There are some areas that are emerging very strongly in our academia that is requiring an integration between different types of expertise and different scholars. And I believe that inevitably early career faculty will be partnering in a way that a computer science working with a public health, working with an educator, and they'll be partnering to write grants, postdocs, grad students will be collaborating very differently. And I think we're going to see a great opportunity for us to kind of navigate through different skills that used to be more siloed. And I think we're going to be able to see on these emerging majors and graduate programs a more a stronger collaboration and also partnership with faculty, writing grants together and attracting funds in a very creative, innovative way as well. I think there's an amazing opportunity for that. I have seen here in Maryland, we do some grants and seed grants. I have seen grad students from public health talking to grad students in computer science, and they are trying to build something together, and they got faculty to sponsor them. They submit grants. And so I think those seed grants are already happening, and I think the big research grants, and we're going to attract large funding. And colleges that don't have traditionally are not necessarily, or majors or areas, they are not traditionally engaged with grants, now are getting partnered and developing partnerships and putting grants out together, because the world is requiring that kind of type of interdisciplinary approach on grants. They'll focus on applied and applied research, translational research, and that's what we need. We need the bench, but also we need the lab, but also need the bench work as well.
Yeah,
sorry, I want to chime in a little bit about the interdisciplinary collaboration, which I think is a really important point. I think that's really where the entire academia is trending toward. It's really beautiful in terms of people from different backgrounds work together to do all those amazing stuff. But it's also incredibly hard with all the intentionally skill building when you are even a PhD student. Say you want to work with a neuroscientist on some like a really cool project. But if you don't even understand the basics of machine learning, you don't even have the common language to communicate. So I think for especially doctoral students, I really encourage them to take courses beyond their own program to have that digital literacy, right? Like as I mentioned this term. I know like at UMD, we also have this new artificial intelligence interdisciplinary program that can offer an entry point for every single student who has or has no background in AI at all. They have some entry point to learn about AI, so that at least you have a common background and can open up so much possibilities down the road. So for campuses that haven't done this yet, I will encourage you to leverage whichever you have on campus or online resources to develop this kind of knowledge and skills early on. So you don't need to be an expert, but you need to know the basics and the basic language and how to think like a computer scientist, things like that. So that you can talk to people, you can work with people with that kind of skill sets, and you don't feel like they are speaking a really different language. You don't even understand what they're talking about. So that's something I really encourage my students to do, and I think I want to share that here.
Cool, perfect. Yeah, I think also both of the points, or sort of the several points raised there, do complement each other quite well. Obviously, in terms of inter and even like transdisciplinary, which is at the University of Auckland, that's what the new faculties are merging into, where we now have the humanities, social sciences, and the arts all joined into one faculty to try and create more inter and transdisciplinary research and engagements, and even courses and programs which go across multiple different majors and courses that undergrad students are choosing as well. I think that in some way, the way I was engaging with some of the ideas shared there, that can help sort of flip the balance with working with like ed tech companies and corporations, where there is that wide range of knowledge where you can produce something, understand the mechanics of it, and also maybe the social impact of the ed tech solutions or programs that are put out there, just to try and, I think in some of the literature I've been reading, that there's all this ongoing balance and sort of conflict between ed tech companies and higher education for the power in the space of how students and particularly in higher education undergraduates learn and engage with the content. So yeah, I think that's an interesting way that as early career researchers and postgraduates, we can start to engage with different views, so obviously take different courses and widen our skill set in order to contribute to some of these conversations as well. And you mentioned a couple of the different resources and tools that are available at universities in terms of like you can take courses on programming or coding or computer science sort of orientated free programs. Are there any other resources or tools that you're aware of that might be useful for our listeners to go away and check out, whether they're online, if they're free, or ones that maybe they can ask their supervisors if they could take a course from different universities? Are there any tools or resources that you think would be beneficial?
I can start with in terms of technology. I would say remember that a lot of universities have virtual labs. Not like sometimes they'll focus on the hardware or getting a software. Sometimes you need to remind people there are virtual desktops that people have access to a full suite of software, and make sure that students and early career professionals know that those resources are available there. I would like to talk about also database access, right? We talk about technology, but today a lot of work is conducted with large database. Some of those databases require paid access to it. And sometimes people forget that those databases are acquired by an institution, by the library, and it's available to them to conduct research. They look at libraries as like, I need a paper or I need a book, but they forgot that also the libraries house a bunch of access to database, national database, international database. Sometimes very expensive, you're right. And I have seen, from my perspective, sometimes I have noticed two different colleges buying exactly the same data sets. And it's like, can we just talk to each other and not avoid redundancy here? We are one institution, right? Because the researcher has a grant, has a need, but not necessarily talking to another researcher who has already bought access to that database. So as an institution, we need to organize and coordinate that. But that's not your problem. It's probably an administrative problem. Also, I would say that as a non-tech one resource, and I would say could be the kind of my final say here, but saying that I think one of the most valuable resources that we have on campus for early career professionals in higher education is mentorship, right? Having access to mentors that can mentor you professionally, not just academically. And I learned very early in my career that this is a very distinguished type of mentorship, right? Sometimes people confuse and think that your academic mentor can be your career mentor, your professional mentor, and that necessarily goes well, right? Having that distinction for something for me was important, and every time that I have opportunity, I pass that information along to say, trying to identify professional mentors that you can talk to about your career. Because in higher education, in the early stage, you're developing a path, a journey, and you're early in that journey. Having someone who can help you build that journey, helping how to overcome the barriers, how to get access to things. Sometimes it's not, you don't need to know everything, but you need to know who knows, so you can talk to that person, right? Building that network, having a professional mentor, a professor that can help you think about your career and design your career. It's something that I believe it's critical. It's a non-tech, low cost, highly relational, and it's something that is doable. And keep in mind, your academic mentor sometimes is not necessarily the best person. You have that distinction. Sometimes it's a good combination and it works out, but not necessarily is the same, cannot be necessarily needs to be the same person. So keep about, sometimes it needs 2 or 3 professionals to mentor you, right? Think about mentorship, it's critical because sometimes you don't see and somebody else can help you to see things on how to overcome the challenge that you have, not just academically, but also professionally as well. And that's a non-tech one.
Yeah, both points are great, and I want to add on to that. So databases, that's exactly true, especially for education policy research. At Maryland, we are actually very lucky because we have the Maryland longitudinal data system that provides cross-sector data, beautifully link K-12 early childhood, K-12 education, higher education to the labor force. Very interestingly, all our policy students know this data set, and you have actually, know how to navigate the access, and you can use that data for your dissertation. But when I talk to people who are in different units of the campus, and they actually do similar research sometimes, when I ask their students, they have no idea this exists, and they have no idea how to access data. I was just shocked, like, how can that happen, right? So it's that kind of connects to that mentor issue Marcio just mentioned. Like, it really depends on who you know, who your mentor is, whether your mentor is willing to share resources with you. But the reality is that data system at Maryland is underused. It actually needs more researchers to go in there, produce more meaningful research, but somehow it doesn't achieve that because of a lot of issues. So I think, again, make sure you are aware of all the resources available to you, and sometimes that takes some digging on your own. Second, I just shared actually 2 links to you. Learnprompting.org is actually maintained by a UMD student, which actually gives you really good resources in terms of how to learn to do prompt engineering. I think it was free before, but now there's only part of the content is free, and they charge a monthly subscription fee. The second probably is free in GitHub, General AI for beginners. I think actually learn how to use AI. It's already gonna produce a lot more support to you. So investing some time in terms of learning how to use generative AI in a productive way is gonna be very, very helpful. Yeah.
Cool, yeah. Yeah, nice little advertisement for the student at Maryland as well there for the prompt engineering one. Yeah, I think some of the points you raised there are both obviously technical skills and knowledge, but also interpersonal as well. I kind of wanted to ask, do you think that a lot of the maybe skills or values that were important in academia before that a lot of AI and digital technologies sort of integrated into the higher education space? So things like networking, ethics, being resourceful, having values. Do you think all of these are just as important or maybe more important now? Or do you think there are different skills and different values that individuals need that are specific to sort of the digital transformation? I was just interested to see if do you think it's the same continued into this digital era, or there are some more nuanced differences or features?
You want to go first, Gene?
You go first. I don't know how to answer.
Okay. Yeah, that's a complicated one. I think it's aligned a little bit with what the question that I posed already, like what responsibility look like moving forward, right? I think that conversation needs to start to happen as soon as possible. Otherwise, we're going to be at the will of those prototypes, so at the will of the technology itself. Like it's a tool. Technology is a tool. What we're doing with it, we can define by who we are as an identity, as an essence, and what a commitment we have in the world, right? And I speak from an educator mindset. I am not a technologist. I'm not a computer science. Just as a context, I'm an educator by heart. I have been my career as an educator, so keep that in mind. But I really think that is, I think AI brought up this very strongly, right? Even 2 days ago, I was giving a keynote, and one grad student asked me, is it the case that I need to start looking for classes around ethics and philosophy so I can succeed in the world? And say, yeah, hell yes. Like, yes, you should be looking at a more broader perspective. That's what universities are for, to understand who you're going to be as a leader in the world, right? And you're going to be leading projects, you're going to be leading teams, you're going to be leading big tech companies, and whatever you're going to be driving in the future, you need to have education related to those areas. So I think that is critical, and AI is bringing all this conversation back again. But I really think looking forward, we need to create a human-centered AI or human-centered technology, right? How can we do? We understand that regulations is not censored, right? Regulations are needed. As the nuclear bombs require regulation, technology may require some regulation. We have learned a lesson. I'm going to say it again. The unleashed social media in the world has gone wrong. We know that. We have that evidence. Are we going to keep making the same mistakes? Have we not learned any lesson from that time? Right? So there is a huge social, political, ethical responsibility in place right now. It's high stake. It's moving too fast. Universities do not move as fast as we could and as we should at this point. But we cannot just not stop. So it's a humanized technology, whatever you want to call, a human-centered technology world that we need to build. We need to be accountable for what we are building. And yes, you need to be at the table. As an early career today, I would say, if you're out of that table, if you're out of that conversation, you need to figure out a way into those conversations. Talk to people, learn what's happening, get into the conversation, because you need to get ready professionally to get into this world. And you need to understand where you are and how you're going to create your impact. I think those concepts of ethics, philosophy, and everything is going to be critical. I used to do this when I was an undergrad student, and I think people are already missing out because the value has gone a little bit diffused along the years in this over the past years.
Yeah, completely agree. Actually, at UMD, we have this like trustworthy and human-centered AI Institute, which is sponsored by Zone SF with a $20 million grant. $20 million grant to really develop research around this, especially focusing on how to use a participatory design process to design all the AI tools, like involving all the stakeholders from the very beginning of designing any AI tools, unless in the before it was only designed by engineers and deployed to any stakeholder who are going to use it. Right now, from the very beginning, you need to involve stakeholders in the design process. From a personal perspective, because in my own work, I have been thinking a lot about how can we prepare students at the K-12 stage to really face the challenge of an AI-infused future. What kind of skills and competencies that cannot be really replaced by AI? That's kind of human value, right? As like your reasoning skills, decision making. So in some ways, it's an issue we need to grapple with in the entire education system, because AI is changing the world so quickly. There are already certain kind of tasks or jobs that can be replaced by AI. That's kind of undeniable. But then what make us unique as human and also as employees in some ways? I only started to think about this issue more recently, but I think that's something we need really lots more people to do research and just move forward as a conversation. And as graduate student, think about the kind of research, the kind of skills you develop, the kind of knowledge you develop that cannot be easily replaced by AI. And like try to think, research things that are more fundamental. Try to develop your skills that can help you leverage technology in a very productive way, rather than like whatever you develop can be easily replaced by technology. I think that kind of mindset and approach can go a long way. So even if you can be mindful about when you are choosing a research topic, choosing which course to take, choosing which project to work on. So just think, having that kind of in the background of your mind can be very, very helpful. Yeah, I will stop here.
Cool. Yeah, definitely interesting as well. Oh, sorry, Marcio.
No, Jack, I just want to say that there's a lot of concerns about what AI is going to replace, how many jobs it will replace, and the whole market situation. I have presidents ask me how many faculty will hire less with AI in the future, right? To teach courses, right? There's some universities prototyping course that can be developed and taught by AI and eventually created by AI. But recently I came across, and I want to share, there is a new piece of, there's a small startup, not a small anymore, startup that is already building the AI scientists. I don't know if you're familiar with. They already building a piece of technology that can do the full design of a research, right? So the AI piece can have the idea, can work on the idea, can design an experiment, can test it out. They do iterations of the test, and then they will do the full circle of research. So it's basically doing the work, and that's very scary, Jing. You're right. And I will share the link with you so you can explore, but they have the full cycle of research until publication. So they already published some papers fully produced by AI, from idea generation to testing, and of course, with some flaws. So they're testing those. That is a level of automation, because I usually put AI in 4, or technology in 4 different buckets, right? Assisting, assisting, augmented, automated, and autonomous, right? So those 4 buckets, as on assisted and augmented, it kind of has human in the loop. So it's helping us. It's helping us to get the transactional stuff. It's augmenting my capacity to produce content and produce things, and planning my trip to Europe, right? So that's a great way to augment my capacity, and it's helping me. But when it gets automated and autonomous, it's get a little scary. And this research thing is an automated way that technology is getting out of the hands of humans and emulating completely the role of a scientist in academia. And I'll share the link so you can explore and read more about it. And the second tool, I don't know if you're aware, OpenAI just released this new strawberry model, right? The O1 which has reasoning. So GPT-3 and 4, they use models that are trained. Like Manal just said, you can put information, we're helping to train the model. The O1 which is called the strawberry model. It's another prototype in the market that includes reasoning. That kind of piece of technology of AI is very different. AI is thinking before responding to you. It's not based on any training. It has autonomous way of thinking. And we do not have access to the way that the machine is thinking. That is the closest that we have seen of someone trying to make decisions, or a robot making decisions based on a reason, on a logic that you do not have as a user access to that logic. That is super scary to me, because that is, I don't think we are ready for this. That's what it is. We are trying to get ready for ChatGPT 3, and people are releasing things that are very, very, very edgy, and the society is not ready for it. And then the control of the logic is in the hands of who has the power with the data, and the owner of that company, Sam Altman, basically has the access to the logic. Nobody else may have access to the logic. So it's going to be, and then we're talk about just the digital divide. We talk about societal divide, and who has the power and who has not the power. And that's going to be a huge social impact.
Yeah,
I dropped the chat. It's called Sakana. The paper one is pretty cool to watch and see what they're doing. And I thought it's fun to watch. And researchers get scary of this. So I just drop in the chat and people can have fun with it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we'll just ask for final statements in just a second. But if you do have any questions, part of the if you're listening or watching, feel free to throw them into the chat now. But yeah, definitely kind of interested in terms of taking those two sides of maybe what the AI can do and what it's sort of progressing towards, and how we as individuals, as learners, as early career research, but also K-12 students as well, what value they can bring in a world with AI. And I think a lot of the things that I've been reading and looking at is more to do with the difference, obviously, between syntax and semantics, whereas the AI obviously understands the syntax, it understands like the codes, the words, as words, whereas obviously we have an understanding of the meaning behind that, and trying to retain some sort of real world understanding of application and impact. I think that is where obviously the ethics and the values and the skills to leverage those that we've been talking about, the educators can obviously lean on those to retain their value in a world with AI as well. So yeah, I don't know if you had any final statements you wanted to mention just to wrap us up. It was a bit of a scary, daunting end. Otherwise, we're more hopeful, perhaps.
Yeah, I didn't mean to scare anyone. I just say we need to be aware of what's going on. Those things that I mentioned happen like September, October, like August things released, right? So things are happening very fast. It's being very hard for me. Like I've been giving talks about AI, and I cannot keep up to be ready for the next audience, because they're going to come up with something that I have. I already gave up on knowing things. I want to say I'm not here to scare anyone. I'm just calling for everyone to think about how can responsibly use technology. Technology is just a tool. Let's be conscious about it. Let's be intentional about it, and let's use it purposefully in our life. Let's build a world in which, let's spread this world, right? Let's become someone who can tell people that's what we need to do. Technology is going to come at us like problems, but we need to decide how we're going to handle this moving forward. That would be my final word.
Well, thank you. And Jane, did you have any final statements you wanted to mention?
No, good.
Perfect. All right. So thanks again to both of you for your time and offering your insights. It's been a great discussion today as well. Lots to consider and to take away into our future practices and studies. So yeah, thanks again to everyone who joined the webinar as well. We mentioned at the start that this was the fourth webinar in a series on the topic of digitization in higher education. Manal's put into the chat there some of the contact details we have. You feel free to follow us on X or Twitter. There's our website, our LinkedIn as well. We also have an Eventbrite page where we post links to upcoming webinars and events. But yeah, so thanks again for joining today's webinar. Hopefully see you again in the future events later on in 2024 and into early 2025 as well. So yeah, goodbye for everyone here, and thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.